So the next kind of transformative product here, and this, it is genuinely transformative if you frame it like this. This is a product that lets you no longer use the requirement of Android Auto or CarPlay when you're shopping for a car. Now this is huge because obviously it just removes a sort of time frame on the age of the car that you're looking at. You can just go back and look at older cars, and this is an area I'm more and more interested in, as sort of modern cars leave me feeling a little bit disappointed. But then you're left with this kind of, how do you bridge the gap with the modern world? And you want your sat nav from your phone using the data and the traffic data and all of these kinds of things. So you sort of think, you end up finding, and this has happened to me, you end up using CarPlay or Android Auto as a line in the sand for a feature that you must have on your next car. And that just means you end up looking at new cars. When you frame it like that, actually, if you can retrofit CarPlay and Android Auto to any car in a way that is genuinely functional and not clunky, then this just drastically can change your whole outlook on the car selection process. And that is what I think the CarPod Go unit does. It does the whole retrofit for these two technologies, CarPlay and Android Auto, so well. So if you're new to the idea of what this is, I know a lot of people still just have their phones in a cradle on the dashboard and they use the maps, and I think that's just a bad idea. The phone is inherently designed to be distracting. I know they kind of lock this stuff down a little bit when it knows you're driving and so on, but ultimately I don't think you want your phone in your visibility. And then of course, from my perspective, I'm exploring sort of using much smaller phones as the daily driver phones, anyway. So the idea of using that on the dashboard just doesn't work for me. Ideally you want a bigger screen that's better optimized for the task. And really the way this works best is when you have wireless Android Auto and wireless CarPlay. The idea of plugging your phone in every journey, to just get the screen to come on is a huge barrier. And it was actually using the original CarPod Go unit in the Land Rover that made me realize just how brilliant removing the friction of having to plug the phone in to get the connection to the screen each time really is. It's just amazing to be able to just step in the car, turn it on, and have your Android Auto or CarPlay interface display from your phone, but on the screen that's already in the car, fully wirelessly. This is excellent. Most short journeys, you don't need to worry about your phone's battery running out. It's just something you don't need to do is plug it in. So having that wireless connection is fantastic. So the Hyundai Ioniq I have has CarPlay and Android Auto support, but it's only on the cabled version. This always was a little bit of a niggle. I bought this car because it had this technology. It was obvious, and obviously I bought it because it was electric as well, and I wanted the fuel savings of that. But ultimately, that was one of these things. I was pleased that it had the CarPlay support, but ultimately, this hassle around plugging in every time did just lead me to think, if there was a screen I could get for this car that would allow me to have Android Auto, that would be fantastic. So I was obviously sort of thinking, actually, do I just get another one of these CarPod Go units? But the original one is pretty big. It's a big screen, works beautifully in the Land Rover. It fits wonderfully in there. The Ioniq interior is a little bit more cramped. I couldn't really sort of visualize where I might put this big screen because, of course, the Ioniq's already got its own big screen. And so the bigger original model is probably better for cars that have no sort of screen already, or at least a bit more space to put this in there. But this new one that they've released, the CarPod Go Mini, is actually a perfect size for something like a car with its own screen already, and you just want to add this on without it really getting in the way too much. So this was just genuinely something I wanted to add to the Ioniq. I was really pleased that CarPod Go were happy to send me one of these for free. In fact, I've always had this idea of a BMW i3 as being a great sort of second-hand EV buy. They're a little bit more complex than the Ioniq and potentially a little bit more prone to expensive failures and so on. But a lot of those old i3s didn't have CarPlay support at all. So it's a really interesting car in so many areas. But if you had this idea that you wanted the CarPlay one, you'd end up buying the newest model of this. You might not necessarily want to do that, and it would be costing you thousands of pounds more than those older models without the CarPlay. So the CarPod Go unit can just eradicate that problem from your thinking process. So the original one of these was just a genuinely brilliant product. I had it running in the Land Rover, and actually several of my friends and family have now gone and bought them themselves. I recommended it, I had no problem recommending it, and they've bought these themselves. So they're all driving around with these as well. It's that good. I'm happy to sort of recommend it to my close friends and family because it is that good. The new one is just as good. It's smaller, it's cheaper, it's lighter, it's easier to fit in more compact cars in your dashboard. But it has all of the same kind of ideas and philosophy behind it, and that is namely only that it's a Linux-based device that does one thing well. It does the Android Auto and the CarPlay and nothing else. It's not got its own app system. There's so many of these weird things that are Android powered themselves that claim to offer CarPlay for your car will route it through an Android operating system. They'll have their own apps and they'll say it's got YouTube. And of course, all of these ideas are just mad and unnecessary. If you're something in the car, you want it to be fully optimized with the idea of driving and reducing distraction. That's for me just a no-brainer. And it's so great to see this product holding firm on this idea that it is just doing one thing well. Of course, this is a theme I explore on this channel all the time. As opposed to all of these little weird Android devices that you plug in and claim to work on the same screen and all this kind of stuff. I have actually tried some of those and they're really clunky. Whereas this dedicated device running Linux, just doing that one thing, is optimized specifically for coming on as soon as you get in the car, showing Android Auto and CarPlay. There's no boot up time. It's very fast. There's obviously a small delay while it connects, but it just works every time. And the reliability of this approach is absolutely evident. Several years later from the T3 Pro model, I've had no reliability issues with that. It connects every time. Just works really well. And it's the same process in the CarPod Mini. It runs Linux. It just connects wirelessly every time and works really well. So the brilliant thing about this, and I think probably a lot of people are quite confused by how this works in terms of actually the audio routing of this product. What is amazing about it is, again, it focuses on just doing one thing well. It doesn't try and deal with the audio. It lets you deal with the audio from your phone any way you like. And all it does is just do the screen part, which is absolutely brilliant. There's so many kind of specific requirements you might have about how you want to route audio into your car's speakers. You might have a really old car that doesn't have anything. It just has a cassette player and a radio. Well, you can use an FM transmitter with this. So if you've got a car like that, you just tick the box when you order this and they'll send you an FM transmitter and you can use that to get the audio to come out of your speakers. And then it will be the microphone from that connects to your phone through Bluetooth. And this all works with phones. They're quite happy to push the display out to a CarPlay or Android Auto screen, but deal with the audio from a Bluetooth connected device. This is just a brilliant way of upgrading any car. There's really no requirement. It's not like you have to have auxiliary input or any other way of getting the audio in. If your car's got Bluetooth, that's absolutely fine. You just let the phone connect to the car directly for the Bluetooth audio. So that's how you use the audio for calls and music. And then the CarPlay screen is just obviously just the screen. And you can set this up any way that you like. So the other kind of middle of the road between those two is if your car's got an auxiliary input but no Bluetooth of its own, you can just use the little Bluetooth dongle thing with an auxiliary output 3.5mm into your car's auxiliary in. Then that becomes the Bluetooth part with its own microphone in there. They'll supply this as well if you tick the box when you order it. So you can choose the line at which you want to go. If you've got nothing apart from radio in the car, you can use the FM transmitter route. If you've got auxiliary input, you can use the dongle with that. And of course, if the car's got Bluetooth of its own, then you just let your phone connect straight to that. And it doesn't matter which one of these routes you use for sorting the audio side of things out. You can upgrade that car to have microphone and the phone call support as well as your music support, and then the screen just does the screen bit. So of course, doing this one thing well, it sort of stands to reason that the screen itself should be very good, and that's absolutely the case. High resolution, incredible color, really very bright as well. Obviously, driving in full sunlight, you need that screen to be bright to be able to see it, and they can do the sort of dimming at nighttime and all these kinds of things as well. But very fast refresh rate, and these wireless Android Auto and wireless CarPlay, they will support fast refresh rates, 60 frames a second refresh rates. So the nice thing about the CarPod Go Mini is the way that they've designed the attachment. So obviously, when you're retrofitting something like this to a car, you want to kind of think how it's always a challenge as to how to integrate it into your dashboard and keep the neatness reasonable. Obviously, it does need a power cable. That's the only cable that needs to go into it. It's just power from USB-C, because of course we're dealing with the audio routing totally separately. It's not like you have to think about that from the screen. But the mounting mechanism itself is just using the MagSafe connector format. So any MagSafe adapter for a phone, you can use this with it. And they supply one obviously in the box for this as well. That's got a rotating mechanism on it. Obviously, you just set this at landscape and use it like that. But it's just great that you don't have to sort of work with the specific mount that is supplied with this unit. If you've got a different idea, a different mount sort of approach in your car, you can use anything that's got the MagSafe connector on and it will just stick onto it. And if you didn't want it on display, if you were parking somewhere, particularly dodgy, you wanted it just out of the way, you could just pop it off and put it in the glove box as well. So for me, I just kind of routed the USB-C around the dashboard. It just comes from the front of the windscreen back across the dashboard to the screen. That's neat enough for me.